to today's Tuesday Times Roundtable. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce our moderator for the day. Valerie George, PhD, received her BS in Food Science from the University of Minnesota and her Master's in Educational Psychology and a PhD in Nutrition from Laval University in Quebec. I went to Quebec last summer. It's a very nice place. Yeah, loved it. She completed her postdoctoral studies in behavioral medicine at UM. I'll forgive you for that. Her research has been primarily in the area of obesity and physical activity. She has an expertise in designing studies to understand the impact of environmental, psychological, and metabolic variables on the energy balance. She has also expertise in the area of intercultural communication. All of that has led up to what she's now doing since last semester. Dr. George has been the Faculty Fellow for Academic Integrity. That is what today's session will focus on, and she'll tell you more about it from there. Dr. George.
Well, I'm very pleased to see all of you here today. I was on the BBC campus last week. Yeah, it was last week, and the crowd was much smaller, so I was wondering what we have here today. But I'm very happy that you're interested in this topic and that you want to come and learn a little bit more about academic integrity and what that means to you in your lives and what that means in other people's lives. As Eric just mentioned, I got into this position this year as the first FIU Fellow for Academic Integrity. And people ask me, well, what happened? Why did that happen? And so the short story is that about 4 years ago, I gave an midterm exam, and I walked out after the exam. I was walking by the library from the classroom, and I'm just walking and probably reading something. All of a sudden, I heard two students, and then the voices were familiar. And I said, who is that? You know, and I looked up. But at that same moment, I heard that they were discussing what was on the exam. And when I looked up, I realized that the two students were students from two different sections. And one student was sharing with the other student the information on the exam. So I had a moment there where I thought, what to do? So what I decided to do was to stop and confront the students and ask them what they were talking about. And the response was nothing. And I knew that wasn't the truth because I had heard that they were talking about the exam question. And I said, well, no, you're talking about the exam. And the response of the student who was providing information about the exam to the other student who wanted to know what was on the midterm was, well, I didn't give him the answers. And I thought, well, that's an interesting response. And she said it in all sincerity. I didn't give him the answers. And I said, well, I think we need to talk about this. So we actually did. We started a whole conversation, and I also started a conversation with the university trying to figure out what do you do when you find a student in that circumstance. And it was at that moment that for the first time in 18 years, because I've been here 20 years, I guess it was 17 years then, 16 years, I was confronted with a time where I needed to address an academic integrity issue that I thought was difficult, and I didn't know what to do. So all those years went by, and I never looked to see, are there policies, are there procedures, what is academic integrity, where do I go for help? And that was the beginning of my journey. So I have spent, actually last year I took a leave of absence to study the topic of academic integrity. I did an assessment of FIU based on a tool that was developed by the International Center of Academic Integrity, which is located in Clemson, South Carolina. And that assessment tool allowed me to look through all different areas of the campus. There's 10 specific areas that I addressed to see what we had available here to help us with the issue of academic integrity. And from what I learned from that experience, I actually made 10 recommendations to the provost's office. And I met with them last year, and they said, well, based on those recommendations, we're wondering if you want to take the job as being the first FIU Fellow for Academic Integrity. And I said, okay, let's go. So since that time, I've been involved in assisting students, assisting faculty, talking with administration, trying to figure out what's going on, not only here, but kind of in the world with the issue of academic integrity. So if you had an opportunity to read the article, Fading Honor Code, this was a story about what's happening now at Middlebury College in Vermont, and I've actually been there. I went there on a vacation, and I'm familiar with the area. And the fact that now they're keeping proctors in the room, but prior to that time, students took exams with no proctors, nobody in the room. I don't know how many exams you guys take like that, probably only when you're online. And then even then, I think maybe some people have other people in the room. So this has been a learning for me to look at different institutions as well as our institution and try and understand where are we and how can we address academic integrity. So I guess my starting point was to first see how do students get exposed to the issue of academic integrity at FIU. And you may or may not remember, but if you came here as a freshman and you went to orientation, you more than likely did the FIU pledge as a student of this university, and you actually said it at the beginning of your orientation. I'll be honest, in my academic endeavors, I will not represent someone else's work as my own. I'll not cheat, nor will I aid another's cheating. You may even see it in some of your classes. I don't know, maybe you have faculty members that bring up the pledge in the beginning of the semester, or other faculty members who may ask you to recite it before you take an exam or you do some kind of an assignment. Some of you are nodding yes, and some of you are going, what? So I don't know. We're learning about that. So the question becomes, for you, what is academic integrity? So that's been my big question for many people. And actually, I've asked faculty, I've asked students, and I've asked administrators. And you know what? I get all kinds of different answers. Mostly I get, you know what? I don't really know. I guess it's you don't cheat. But I get a lot of, I'm not so sure. Now, I was fortunate to have taught ethics 5 years here at FIU as part of my assignment and my academic work also, and basically in the field of medical ethics. So I do know that question of what is integrity can be a little nebulous. In other words, it's relative. And it becomes relative based on what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, and that's our individual cultural trees. I want you to think about, if somebody asked you right now, what would you say is academic integrity? What pops up in your mind? Anybody? Tell us. This is one of my former students right now.
Academic integrity is not passing off other work as your own.
Everybody hear that? It's not passing off other people's work as your own, yeah? Not cheating on exams and stuff. That probably work, yeah. Anybody here? Academic integrity? Thoughts? Oh, good. Yes?
I was going to just say, like, only using your thoughts on assignments, and if you're using anyone else's thoughts, then just cite it.
Okay, very good. Using only your thoughts, and then if you use someone else's thoughts or ideas, you're going to cite it. Yes?
Not using a ghostwriter.
Hey, that's a big one right now. With every one of those websites that are currently available, I call them the predatory websites. But they're really, the official term is contracting websites. That's where you can contract a online company, which I did this year, by the way. I did a couple of them, and I'm very good friends with Danielle. And basically, you can give them the name of your course, what you'd like them to do online. They could take your exam for your midterm 175. I used my course. My midterm was 175. My final 225. And I said, now I've got labs. And they said, well, what kind of labs? I have counseling labs. That gets a little bit more difficult to do assessment of that. But anyway, they were willing to do that for $50 a pop. Okay? So basically between $175 to over $1,000 I could invest in having someone else do my work. And they were guaranteeing me between an A and a B, not an A. So I declined. Guys. Okay, so you're right. You're right about that, not having somebody else do the work. The International Center for Academic Integrity gives the definition of academic integrity as a commitment to honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and courage to act. And right now, I would say at most universities, they're engaged in what I call values efforts to address academic dishonesty and to promote academic integrity. So what does that mean? It means that they're using values like the International Center for Academic Integrity to help students, faculty, and staff know what academic integrity means. So what is some misconduct? What are things that can happen where your faculty member can say to you, or you as a student can say to a faculty member, I'm not okay with what's going on in the classroom in terms of the academic activities here. So it might be misrepresentation, falsification of records. Oh yeah, this fall I had a really incredible case. Some guy actually signed off on his own loan. Yeah, that was a big one. I said, you got to be kidding me. And he said, no, it's I didn't do it. It's somebody else's signature. And I said, really? Where's your driver's license? He had a totally different signature. He maybe had several different driver's licenses. I don't know what's going on there. Other misconduct: cheating, plagiarism, bribery, academic dishonesty, misuse of computer services, and conspiracy and collusion. So here's an illustration. This semester, situation where a student puts on her class website this announcement: I have a friend who can't finish their assignment. Can somebody in the class do it for him? He's offering $100. Not bad. On the class website. So when I asked the student about it and she came in to see me, she did not know why she was being asked to come and talk with me, first of all. And second of all, I said to her, how much do you get out of this? And she said, well, I don't. But in the beginning, he offered me $25. Get a little messy once you get into that academic misconduct stuff. It's a little messy. Okay, so now the question is, and I asked myself, and there's all kinds of literature about it, why do students do academic misconduct? And my answer is fear. Fear of failure. They're not mastering the material. If you know all your stuff, then why would you ever cheat? If you knew everything you needed to do and you could sit down and take the test or do the assignment or do the project, then you'd never need to cheat, would you? It's only when there is not mastery. So at the top there, lack of mastery, and ultimately fear of failure is when we get academic misconduct. Now, how is it that we have lack of mastery? In other words, how is it that we're not understanding the materials? Well, sometimes we don't understand it. When I took my courses in statistics, I did it in French at University Laval, and I only moved to Quebec City 2 years before, and my French was not good because I hadn't learned the language. I was taking French classes, and I was taking statistics classes. And I kept going over the material. I'd get English books, and then I'd ask the professor again, what are these words mean? Because I'd always translate standard deviation, which is écart type, in French back and forth, and my head was getting a little confused. It's the same thing for some of you here, where English isn't your first language, and you're trying to always go back and forth. So that's cognitive problems or communication problems. I notice students will use time management. They'll say, I didn't have time to finish the assignment. I didn't have time to study. So then you go back to, well, you got 24 hours. What do you do in the 24 hours? And a lot of students and a lot of faculty are doing phenomenal amount of productivity in all different areas of their life. And so it's really difficult to be sure that you're on top of everything because there's so many things going on. And I understand that. So that's about priorities too. Pedagogy and instruction, you know, I'm amazed at this time in my career where my students that I have now think that I'm trying to trick them on a midterm exam. You know, they'll say to me, are you going to have any kind of trick questions? And I'm like, what? I don't even get the concept. In fact, I most of the time tell all my students you can have A's. Correct? I say, everybody in here gets an A. Day one. Got to do the work. You show me you did the work, you get an A. That's it. And I'm clear about what the work is, and I tell them what the work is, and I help them get the work done. And it worked in there. You're happy. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, everybody has a different paradigm. Every faculty has a different paradigm about how that whole process should go. And then communication. Now, when is the assignment due? And what time is it due? And by the way, with the online course, we're going to close the windows at this time. So if your assignment comes after that, it's not going to count. Everybody's got to be on the same page about it. At the same time, the calendar has to be right on the online course. So I had students this year who saw a calendar on their syllabus and they saw different calendar dates on the website. Not fair. Something's wrong there. So we can have problems like this. Now, at the same time we talk about academic integrity, the other big satori, or the big hello for me, the big awakening, is this over here. Culture and beliefs, culture and beliefs. So let's talk a minute about that. Culture. Everybody here has their own individual cultural tree. What do I mean by that? I mean that every person here, nobody was born at exactly the same time. Do we have any twins, like identical twins and all that? Nobody here is born exactly the same place, exactly the same time, under the exact same circumstances, and had exactly the same life. No. You all have had a different life, and that different life has brought you experiences, and it has cultivated the values you have based on those experiences and the experiences of the society that you grew up in and the caretakers that you had. And that has enabled you to grow your own individual cultural tree. And much of the research that's been done on this concept comes from the Institute for Intercultural Communication that's in Portland, Oregon. They have wonderful workshops every summer. If ever you want to spend a little time at Reed College, go. Great learning opportunity. So how each one of you sees academic integrity, where your values are, is going to impact your worldview and what you think is okay and not okay. So if you see somebody who falls in front of the Graham Center or in front of the library, do you walk by? Do you stop and look? Or do you walk over and help the person get up? I don't know. And you all will respond differently. And you know why you'll respond differently? Because it depends who fell. Yeah. Is it a student? Is it a child? Is it an older person? Is it correct for you to interact with them? All hooked up with your worldview, which is based on your cultural tree. Okay? That concept of your cultural tree is going to influence how you and your peers interact together in reference to your activity, your scholarly activity. I'll go even further to say that your cultural background and your cultural tree is why you're here. and why you have the mission and the vision you have for being here. And it's not the same for everybody, and that becomes the important issue. So sometimes a student will come into my office and request something, and it will seem kind of bizarre to me. And then I'll think, wonder why they are thinking of this. What is their idea? So the student who says to me, Dr. George, I will come in and I'll work for you all semester for free. Yep. But I want you to give me an A in your class. And they ask me in all sincerity, in all honesty, without ever thinking that perhaps for me that's offensive. Because my cultural tree does not include that kind of a relationship. But maybe their cultural tree does. So when we think about academic integrity, we have to, we have to think about, and this is my famous model that I created last year. And what it is a tree. It's called Cultivating Academic Integrity Together. And as you will see at the top, it says culture, but that culture enmeshes everybody. In the center of the tree, something called communication. At the root of the tree is the mission, the values, and the vision of the institution you're at. But at the top, we also have to acknowledge the mission, the values, and the vision of the participants that are in the culture. So ultimately, how we deal with academic integrity and what we do with academic integrity will depend on the culture of all the people who are at the university. Now, interesting, Middlebury that we mentioned in the article, Middlebury doesn't have any proctors in the room up until now. So that university has a history of expectation that the students will have a commitment to honor and will not have any problems with academic misconduct. Well, they're changing. Now they want to have proctors in the room. So their previous culture was one where obviously there was greater level of trust. And now something's happened. So when we talk about academic integrity, we have to really ask people, first of all, what are their values? What's important for them? What guides them in their decision making? And then what's their mission and vision? So I think it was, is it this semester or another semester I was teaching anyway, and I mentioned something about, well, somebody asked me a question, and I said, well, it would depend on your mission. I said, what's your mission statement? And I could tell that the person didn't know what I was talking about. I said, well, how do you know what you're doing? Still, nobody home. I said, well, your mission statement is who you are. They said, well, give me an example. And I said, well, okay, I'll give you mine. I said, I have to carry it in my billfold just because sometimes I forget stuff. So, okay, I got it in my billfold. But I said, I also have it in my office in a little frame. Just a few sentences, but, keeps me straight. So, knowing what your mission is, knowing what your vision is, and where your values lie, really important for us at the university as a community. Important also for you to know what are the values of the university. So that'd be the next question. Wait a minute. What are the values of FIU? Anybody? Go to school here. You have to know what the university values are. Anything. Anybody?
Integrity.
Huh?
Integrity.
Integrity. Thank you.
International education.
International education. Okay, if I had a little board here or somebody, we write those out there. Okay, we got integrity, international education.
Global education.
I'm sorry?
Global education.
Global education. Eric, listen to that. They picked up on that. Global education. What else? Well, okay, let me give you another one. Why did you decide to come to FIU? Yes.
My mom begged me to stay in Florida.
It's called landbound. Okay. Your mom. So there's a family thing. Your mom must have endorsed you being in Florida, but did she endorse FIU?
Yes, I applied to 2 schools in Florida because you know how in high school they give you like a bunch of vouchers and you can apply for a certain amount of schools for free. So I only applied for 2 in Florida out of 10, and then the rest in New York and California. And I got accepted to a bunch of them, but
Mother's getting nervous.
but FIU gave me the best package, if you know what I mean.
Okay, good package. Oh, good package.
And then my mom was like, "Please don't leave."
Good package and,
So
and
it was like
nurturing mother. We'll call her a nurturing mother. Okay, somebody else. Why'd you come to FIU?
It was a good decision, though, FYI.
Okay,
I love it.
you're happy.
Really
She's a happy
satisfied with
camper.
my decision.
Okay. Yes.
It was 2 things for me. It was the school spirit. I liked it when I came here. It was very much felt like a school.
Uh-huh.
And the second thing, it was the idea of being connected to the world without actually having to leave.
Cool. She said it was the idea of being connected to the world without actually having to leave. So would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? What's the connection here?
Well, I meet, if I have 10 friends here, they're all from a different country. I know people from so many Hispanic countries, people from Europe, I mean, everywhere. I don't know 2 people that are from the same place. And most of them leave after they're done with their studies. So that kind of gives me, like, without even visiting a place, I have people there that are not necessarily family. I have friends in Switzerland and places like that. And I think it's fun. When I start traveling the world, it won't be as if, I'm a stranger and I don't know anybody here. I will have someone kind of in all those places.
Can I ask you, since you said you based your decision on that, and that's clearly something you figure out once you're here, but when you were deciding, how were you able to tell that that's what you would get before actually having come here? And was that something you felt about Miami or FIU specifically?
It wasn't about Miami because I lived here for 10 years. It was more because I applied also at FAU. So I went to the FAU orientation, well, before I even got there. When I got to the campus, it was a Wednesday, there was school, and the campus was completely empty. You could not find a student anywhere. You probably saw maybe 10 of them around, and it was completely quiet. It felt like a ghost town. And that same week, I came down here for orientation, and it was completely different. People everywhere, students doing activities. You had mentors everywhere, especially during orientation. You had a large group, people talking to you. It felt like, and I've also always liked the idea of having different connections. I'm very open to different cultures. I felt like, especially when they were talking in orientation about diversity, how diverse the school was, I didn't realize how big it was until I got here. So once I finally came here for orientation, it was like, okay, that's it. This is it. This is like that excitement that I was looking for, and being able to meet so many different people. It was it, and I felt comfortable with it. At FAU, I was depressed. Walking to FAU, I felt depressed. I was like, this doesn't feel like school. I don't think I will graduate if I stay here because I'm gonna drop out. I'm gonna be bored within the next 20 minutes there. But it was a different feeling here.
What's your name?
Sarah?
Sarah. So what Sarah's telling us by telling that story is she's really letting us know what her values are. See, she values that there's some activity going on. She values that there's different people from different places and that she's able to connect with them. Okay? Over here, you valued the package. Now, the package included what? Mom. We got that in that package. So there's some care. She wanted some kind of care. Yeah, relationship. And what else was in the package?
Lots and lots and lots of money.
Okay. So she's valuing support. That's what that is. Money is support.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So she she knows what our values are. And sometimes we need to get into a situation and then ask ourselves, well, why are we here? Or why did we decide this or that? It's only at that moment we go, well, I guess I value this more than I value that. And that gives us clarification. So I ask you to be thinking sincerely when you're in situations where you're not clear about, am I going right or am I going left? To consider what's really at the foundation of that. And I think what you're going to find at the foundation is something important, and it's going to probably be a value. Something that's of value to you, something that is important for you. Yeah.
Another really critical factor was the fact that there's a lot of Hispanics here, so it makes me feel like I have a more likely chance to get a degree.
Keep going on that, because there's going to, I'm not sure where the value is in that. Keep going.
That I felt like I was still in my element. I still felt comfortable. Like I could still go visit my own high school. I could still mentor like the high school kids and tell them about how cool FIU is. And we're like one of the biggest research universities, and we award the most masters and bachelors to blacks and Hispanics in like the entire nation. And that's awesome because I categorize as that.
So you value kind of being with your people.
Yeah. It
It's okay.
comfortable.
In a way, you might value family.
The extended family.
The mom plus everything that goes with mom. Yeah. So that becomes, in your little list of what's important, because sometime you're going to have a decision to make in the future. Somebody's going to offer you a job, maybe in Asia.
Oh, that's exactly where I want to go. Shaman.
Go figure. And she's going to have to make a decision about that. And at some point she says, well, how will I make that decision? Do I just go with my gut? Well, sometimes we do go with our gut because our values are so connected to our gut. Really, that's where we get our sustenance, that we do go with our gut.
Yeah.
But other times we say, well, I think I might have to involve my head in this decision. And then you set down the values, kind of a decisional balancing thing where you say, what's the good, the pro, and the con. But if you don't know what your values are, then it's more difficult to do that.
I can tell you.
So she's already on it. Okay.
So my idea behind working in Asia, well, first I did study abroad there already, and it was, it was really different. It was really different from my culture, but it had also a lot of similarities to Hispanic culture. And right now, I feel like the political climate for like young foreigners in Asia is pretty good, and people like us are kind of privileged there right now. And I'm not gonna lie to you, people think I'm crazy all the time because when I came back from China, I was like, I've never felt the kind of liberty and freedom that I felt in that country, in my own country, in the United States. This is my country, and I never felt that kind of liberty that I felt over there.
She just told you about her values. And what is she valuing now? What's a real fundamental to her? Freedom. Yeah. She's willing to go live on a different continent with people who don't speak the same language.
Don't worry, I'm learning.
Of course, I know you will. With people who maybe don't even look like her and aren't speaking Spanish either. Because of this value that's now surfacing as being very, very important. Now, this process we're going through is something that if I sat down with each one of you, if I had time to sit down with each one of you, by the time we finish, let's say within an hour each, you'd have a clarity in what your values are, and you'd also be able to start to develop your own mission statement about who you are, because it's based on what your values are, and what you're going to do in this world, which is going to lead you into your vision about yourself. Now, I know this because I spent most of my life in a mentorship role with undergraduate, graduate students, friends, family, and I've always asked them, well, what do you want to do? What's your values? Where are you going? What kind of possibilities are you looking for? And once their values are clarified, whoops, seems like an easy decision. Same thing in academic integrity. Your values will determine the choices that you make. So FIU's values: truth, responsibility, respect, excellence, and freedom. Now, some of you are probably looking at that going, what? I didn't know that. What does that mean? I never saw that. Well, tell me about this, okay? This is what the university says is its foundation. Just like you have a foundation. And you've come to this institution. Now, how'd you like to go to an institution that said, we value dishonesty, we value irresponsibility, we value disrespect, and we want things done very poorly, and nobody's free? You want to go to that country? You want to go to that institution? Probably not. And that's one of the reasons you're here, because whether you know it or not, this is what the values FIU professes as how they function, and our function is based on that. And it's got to be somewhat in tune with you, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't want to be here because it doesn't work for you. What's the mission here at FIU? Think about what your mission is, and then think about FIU's. It's a urban, multi-campus, public research university. I heard those words already from people here. Sarah mentioned that. Multi-campus, public research university, serving its students and the diverse population of South Florida, committed to high-quality teaching, state-of-the-art research and creative activity, and a collaborative engagement with our local and global communities. Interesting, because we've heard some of those words come up already, and you didn't even see the mission statement. The vision: to be a leading urban public research university focused on student learning, innovation, and collaboration. Okay, so now, how does all that work with academic integrity? So I'm going to ask the question: is it okay to cheat in your world? And if it is sometimes, when is it? And why is it? And how do you get to that decision-making process? Yes, sir?
Here's the thing, you're not cheating. I mean, you're not only cheating to the professor, you're cheating to yourself, which is the most important thing. There's no reason why you have to.
So he just lets you in the door in his value system. You must be here to learn. Yeah? A lot of people are here to get a paper. I've had them in my classes. They're here to get a paper. The learning part is like a secondary thing. But I always say in my profession, when you get in the hospital room and they're talking about taking the feeding tube out of the grandmother, and there won't be any additional efforts made, you might want to have remembered our conversation in class about how to deal with situations like that. Could be helpful. Or when you're building that building and you're in engineering and, geez, I missed that class. They didn't stir up the concrete like they were supposed to. It looks like this building might fall down. Not too good, just happened in India. Okay? Could happen anywhere. So, very good point. Now, what happens if you have one value and you're here for one reason, but your neighbor has another value and you like your neighbor?
That's fine.
What if your neighbor says, I can't get my work done? Could you do it for me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. This is hilarious. Her body language is no, but then her other facial expressions, well, maybe it's a friend and he's kind of cute. Oh, gosh, okay. I don't know. How am I going to handle that? I'm not putting you on the spot. But these are the decisions we have to make. We got our stuff going, right? But we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live in a vacuum. I live in Westing, but you live wherever you live. But we live in the context of our society, within our little groups or clans that we're in. And then we interact with people from all over the world. Remember, this is FIU. This is the diverse place. So you're going to meet people and you're going to hear ideas and thoughts that may be totally different from yours. But you have to think about, what am I going to do? Yeah, Sarah.
I have a question.
Sure. Only one.
Has it ever maybe been considered that maybe the professors put the student in a situation where they'll have to cheat? Hear me out. I'm not saying it's the professor's fault. Ultimately, it's the student's decision. But if you have a class that you're teaching so openly, you not only invite the student to ask questions during the class, before class, after class, you're always open to explain things to them, take time to explain to them. That student will think twice before cheating you right now, because they're going to be like, okay, this professor works so hard and goes above and beyond to accommodate me and make sure I get the information. The least I can do is try. But when the professor is not compliant, they're just, okay, if you don't get it this time, you'll get it next semester when you fail the class. Or, they're like, oh, we have to move on. We have to finish the lecture. Or we explain this in class when you send them an email to ask them a question. That professor is not only guilt-tripping you from not getting the information the first time, but he's pushing you in a corner because you're pressed for time, you're trying to learn, but they're not necessarily putting themselves available to you to give you the information in a way that you could understand it.
Sarah, thanks for sharing. Somebody else think a thought on that. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, yeah, I see what you mean when the professor can kind of like put you in an awkward position, and like if the situation you're in, you'd be surprised what kind of decisions you make. But then again, I guess it just depends on how your values, like how do you hold, like how resourceful you really can be. If you're in a university, you're clearly not alone. Like in a classroom with lectures like bigger than this room, it doesn't take much to just look to the right and left, or you might even see them from some other class, or there are different ways you can succeed even though the professor's difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but I think I agree with you. But then that's kind of I think what she's saying, because yeah, you can look to your right, to your friend and stuff, but what are they gonna do? They're not gonna sit there and teach you the lecture. They're just gonna be, oh, here, take my notes. Or here, I have a photo of what was there. Or here, we have I just got this. They're also gonna be take the easy route. So it kind of continues to pin you into that corner where, okay, I need to look for these other resources, but you need to kind of use what you have and what is given to you by your classmates, which might not be completely like full of integrity in a way. You know what I mean?
I totally get it.
To make it easier, so I'm not gonna sit there and teach you a lecture. I'll just be like, okay, well, here are my notes, which can put you in that position of where, well, is that the right thing to do?
And therein lies the root. In other words, and therein lies the issue. Now, as I said, everybody here has a different cultural tree. And you see the world, and your worldview is on your perspective of how to even deal with a problem and how to assess a problem and even to identify if it's a problem. And we know already that there are great differences even between genders in how we see problems, whether or not there's a problem or not a problem, and how to address a problem. So individually, you will all have different ways of seeing things, as will your faculty. And that's why I say to you that this understanding of academic integrity isn't so easy. You've got to look at the whole picture. And the whole picture involves looking at culture, too, and considering what are the mission, the values, and the vision of all the people, of the faculty, this is not working, of the students, as well as the administration. So when you have issues that come up and somebody says to you, hey, can I borrow your notes? Or most recently, I had a student that actually had somebody come in and take their exam for him. And the faculty member has them sign in. They actually sign somebody else's name. I mean, we're really, you're willing to take the identity of another person? I mean, we're getting into some heavy-duty values here. When you're willing to give up your identity for somebody else and say you're somebody else. And the student said, I didn't have time. I need this course. Well, as it turned out, it didn't. He may not have had time, but he lost that course because he got kicked out of the university. Yeah, he got kicked out of the University of Miami. So, and then, wanted to come here. And I said, well, I think we need to talk about this because I got to understand this better. So these decisions that we make aren't easy, but if you don't have clarity on your own values and what's okay and what's not okay, and also an understanding of the cultural context and how you fit in that cultural context with the people that you're working with or studying with. A lot of times there's problems in team assignments, and I even hesitate now more and more about team assignments because I know that I must provide an outstanding rubric in order to do an evaluation, as well as allow students to give qualitative comments. Because a part of working in a team project means you have to learn about the culture of the other person. And the culture of the other person might be a difference in how they see time. So like in my culture, I like to have my stuff done about 2 weeks ahead. I'm always running about 2 weeks ahead. I know other people who are always running about 2 minutes ahead. And when I have to work with those people, it creates great anxiety for me. So I've had to learn to think about, you know what? That's how that person's built. They're still going to be productive. They're going to do a good job. They just don't see time like you see time. And you better talk about it. You better work it out with them and see that, you can come to some compromise with this. Otherwise, you're going to be in, ultimately, conflict, which happens often with academic integrity issues. Yes?
I had a situation like this last semester. Well, I'm the same way. When it comes to like group projects, like I don't really like to work with other people unless they're like on my wavelength, because I don't want to have a group project that's due on Monday and we're doing it on Saturday. I just don't like that. I like to have group projects done a little bit in advance so that way we're rehearsing and stuff instead of actually doing the stuff the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And for like 3 or 4 weeks, I was grilling my teammates on my group to do the project with me, and none of them ever responded on our little group chat until the night before. And they're like, Evelyn, so we're here at the school on Sunday, so you should come. And I go, I'm absolutely not coming to school on a Sunday. And they're like, well, why not? Because I have to take the bus. And you know what the bus is like on a Sunday? They don't, but does anybody know how the bus is on Sunday in Miami? I am not going to school from my house on a Sunday, or a Saturday for that matter. And I insisted on them helping me do the project for weeks before. Weeks. You're not going to hit me up the day before the project's due like, hey, come meet us. Because the answer is no.
See this little value thing up here? There's a question mark next to it. It's a big question mark. Here.
I think a lot of this comes down to the size of an institution and how there are so many students in a class and things like that, and that creates several things. I mean, the reason I believe faculty do so many group projects in the first place, they will tell you it's because they're trying to give you a life skill, but I think the bigger motivator is you can't be, grading 600 papers when you can grade 100 paper. So that creates a lot of these situations. And then when it comes to these situations that we're hearing described about faculty who really are not perceived as helpful, well, I don't know whose idea it was when when designing a college, not just FIU but college in general, to be like, oh, here's what's going to work. We're going to have 400 people learning and one person teaching, and that person's going to be responsible for kind of working with each of the 400 students to understand what level they're at and what they don't understand, and getting them caught up and dealing with whatever excuses and life circumstances come up. And you know, people teaching can't really discern between whose mom's really in the hospital and whose mom is made up about being in the hospital, and who really is having a problem processing numbers and doing math versus who didn't study. And it creates a lot of these situations. That's like on the faculty end. And on the student end, I think the reason there's a willingness to, whether it's cheat or just not perform well or not hold up expectations, is because you feel like you're a number. You perceive that the people who teach you here feel you that way. And I get, you know, I get students who don't show up to appointments with me, or who don't respond to emails from me, and it's things that, like, I feel like that is caused by a student knowing that, you know, they're just one of all these students, and whether it's me or you won't really notice or remember them, and a year from now it's not going to be like, well, this was a student who didn't show up, because there's just so many people here. And that also goes, I mean, I think, you know, student to student and employee to employee. You're just another student. If you have a classmate, just one of so many classmates, and never see them again. I can send so many emails here to colleagues who work here who don't respond. And it comes down to this, like, do you see each other as human, or some object of achieving some goal? And when the institution's so large, and the size has so many benefits as well, obviously I'm discussing the negatives, but when you're large, it's hard to see other people as human. And you're talking about values, I think understanding that the people you're working with are human is important to activating your values. Or even if you have these values, if you have forgotten momentarily that the other people who are teaching you and that you're working with are humans, you can put your values aside because you apply your values to other people, and you forget that other people are people, and it's because it's so large. And one thing really quick that I read in an article not that long ago that kind of described what students feel is being imposed on them by American colleges in general, and I think it's true here too, and I've been, like, this phrase has stuck with me, and I think it goes along with my theme of, you know, of size and seeing humans. It's, you know, students feel like they're told, anyone can agree or disagree, that you have to be the same as everyone else, but better. So if you're pre-med or you're psychology, you have to take these classes. You're in this class with 300 other people. You have to do the same assignments. You have to do the same tests. You learn the same material, and there's not a lot of room for deviance about, like, what you're studying and how. But you're expected to be better than everyone else. You have to have the higher GPA. You have to have the more extensive resume, and it's kind of like it creates this conflicting demand. And I think a lot of that feeds into a lot of this as well.
Thank you for sharing. I totally agree that part of the issues we face is that values get lost as the institution gets bigger. Values of everybody, and we don't know what the values are. You know, is it okay to do this here? Is it not okay? And so a part of our goal in academic integrity, and what I'm doing, is just to start the conversation to talk about it, but also to provide some resources and some guidance for that. So actually, we are going to have a new academic integrity website. It should be up very, very soon. And that's going to provide, I hope, some foundation to having that conversation going on, and that there'll be more people actually talking about academic integrity is one thing, but what is the foundation of that? And the foundation is that value thing. If somebody falls, do you pick them up? Why or why not? And what are we actually doing also as an institution to support each other and to be sure that everybody's getting an education? Because that's really what it's all about. I was listening to the radio on the way home, and there was a woman, she was talking about the fact that she was homeschooling her 3 kids. And she was an African American, and she said, you know, it's not really popular in my culture to do that, but I decided when I saw the way my son was treated at school, and I also decided that I valued being with him and sharing this time, that I'm doing this at home now. And I know more and more parents that are homeschooling their kids, you know, hats off to you. I mean, if you can do that and everything else is, you know, Mr. Mom, Mrs. Mom, everybody, it's a phenomenal challenge. But it has again to do with what we value. Doesn't mean though, just because you're in a large institution, that you as in your individual lives, that you don't want to get real clear on what your values are and be very thoughtful in your decision-making process. And when things come up for you where there's a difficulty, then that's a time where you want to reflect and say, hey, okay, we turn left, this is where we go. We turn right, this is where we go. And if we do nothing, this is where we go. And taking that time to be reflective about that, I think really is important, whether it's, you know, any of these issues, getting access to old tests, sharing your homework with somebody. One thing I'm so amazed at is the number of students who sell their stuff online now. Engineering, they had a whole, like 2,000 students were selling they were buying from a person who was selling their assignment online, and I thought to myself, how do you know that person has the good answer? I never would want to take anybody else's answer. I don't know how they're doing it. I want to know I want to understand. I want to know the right answer and that I've done it right, whatever it is. That's kind of shocking for me. Ultimately, do you want to see the doctor who didn't attend classes, or you want to walk into a building that, you know, the engineer missed the classes? These are real issues. So for you as individuals, but within your group, within your community, I think it's important that we all think about it. So this webpage, I hope, is going to help. It has, sometimes people just say, what are the policies and procedures? Great confusion about it. They're in the handbook. Nobody reads the handbook. Okay. So now I created a flow chart that explains everything and forms. And next year, the whole process is going online so that all people who complain about it's too arduous to do it, it's going to be online. I think that's going to be important. But more important, I'm hoping we're going to have some events for students as well as faculty to talk about these issues, to talk about what our values are. Because everything is value driven. The decision to have a large university or a small university. The decision you made to go to a large university or a small university. It all depends on what your values are. And most of our values are pretty established early on. I mean, sometimes they tweak away and sometimes they shift a little, but not big time. Yes?
But wouldn't you say the values are tied to the community that someone's a part of? So you can see from the Panama Papers scandal that like all, you know, these major political figures or all of the sort of cheating and fraud in Miami, you know, it makes it seem okay on some level.
Yeah, so you have to ask yourself.
That might be tied into all of this as well.
It definitely does. And some people make choices about where they live based on the value of the community that they live in.
Yeah.
And they actually say, well, some people change countries. They say, I don't want to be in that country, or I want to be in that country because of the values.
The corruption.
And so we have, you know, we're living within a society and a geographical area. And right now, I mean, look at what's happening in the United States with our current, our political situation with the current elections that are going on. These are times that I can't remember seeing, just the conversation that's happening. So we do have to, well, we are challenged, I think. I think that's the word. To really look at our values, and even though there may be some things going around us that we are not in agreement with, at least when you go home at night, you can look in the mirror, and when you get up in the morning, you can look in the mirror. Because ultimately, that's really what it's all about. Any last question? I want to thank you very much, and I'd be more than happy to talk with any of you about academic integrity, come to your classes, come to your group meetings, whatever. It's a pleasure to share this information.
This has been a production of Academic Video Services within the Division of Information Technology at Florida International University.